WNST, Towson, Baltimore, and WNST.net. I am monitoring all things baseball around here, as well as the Stanley Cup playoffs, and the Caps headed off to Toronto next week. We will be broadcasting from Canada next week, eh? Maybe I get Getty Lee to stop by. We'll find out. 3 days in Toronto, stalking Getty. Oh, it could be ugly. And, of course, the NBA playoffs. But all eyes are on the draft right now, right? I mean, we're a couple weeks out on this thing. It's starting to get serious. I'm delving more into it. I know you are as well. Nick Klopsis spends the year delving into all things draft at Newsday up in New York and Newsday Sports. You can follow his journey out on Twitter at Newsday, as well as at Nick Klopsis. That's Klopsis. He has the Nick. You got to update your Twitter, man. It says Draft 2014 there. You got to get a little Photoshop, put a 17 in there because this sucker's moving to Philly, right?
I know, yeah. I'm trying to see if I could get down there for the draft this year. That was back in when it was in Radio City, because it was a lot easier to just. For me living on Long Island, I could take the train right into the city draft morning, hop over to Radio City, and I'd be right there. So
I'm the spoiled guy, right?
So a little bit more of a trek, but
in '96, I went to the Felt Forum, then the Felt Forum, not the Paramount Theater. I don't know what the hell they're calling it these days, or something anyway. The thing underneath the Garden where they used to do the draft. That I saw John Mellencamp amongst in the Pretenders there at one point. But they've moved this thing around, and in '96 I went. It was the most boring thing other than drunk Jets fans, which it was obviously known for. This has really become like a movable Super Bowl right now. And Philadelphia, all these teams that are places that are never going to get Super Bowls because of weather, they're expecting like ridiculous, like 250,000 people to show up in Philadelphia that weekend, right?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I remember, I think it was Chicago last year. They had really big numbers, too, because they had part of the draft outdoors. So they had the whole Fan Fest thing going on, and apparently, from what I hear, it did really well. I know, when it was here in Manhattan, when it was here in New York City, it still even drew big numbers. I remember the first draft I ever went to as a young fan was 2007, the Jamarcus Russell draft. I remember my dad and I, we woke up real early. We got on at 6 a.m., waited around the corner of Radio City, and then I think it was right at 8 o'clock, they opened up the line. It was just a massive stampede to try to get first come, first served tickets. But it was a long line. There were a lot of people interested.
Are you one of those obnoxious Jets fans, Nick Klopsis, or are you not?
No, I'm not. I'm not a fan of any team really. I kind of it's a little bit cliche for a sports journalist, but I root for the good stories. I root for the guys, the underdogs. I root for something that's a good story that I can tell to people.
I'm not biased. I root for Ozzie Newsome to draft Hall of Famers at 16. That's what I'm looking for. And, the Ravens fans here sitting at 16, clearly the Ravens have been challenged through the draft in recent times, which has, been one of the problems with the team and why they haven't made the playoffs, because the Rashad Perrymans haven't turned out yet. The Kamalea Correas haven't turned out yet. The Matt Elams and the Arthur Browns they've given up on. They need more C.J. Mosleys and more Brandon Williams. Nick, what do you have them mocking to at 16? I've seen wide receivers, I've seen tight ends, I've seen offensive linemen, and all the while I believe that they're going to take a pass rusher or a corner.
Well, in my most recent mock draft, which just came out earlier this week, I have them getting Cam Robinson, the offensive lineman out of Alabama. But in previous mock drafts, I've had them going with pass rushers. I had them going with cornerbacks, but kind of given the situation with, how free agency shook out, they lost Rick Wagner in free agency. He went to Detroit. They do need a big run-blocking right tackle. I mean, they have Ronnie Stanley on the left side to shore that end up, but they could use someone to help open up holes on the other side. And Cam Robinson, he is pretty much the prototypical run-blocking power right tackle that you can look for. He would really help to open up holes for Terrence West, for Kenneth Dixon when he gets back from his suspension, for Danny Woodhead. He's big, mauling, hulking guy. So he would immediately come in and kind of fill that hole that was left when Rick Wagner departed in free agency.
Well, we all know Ozzie loves the Alabama guys. Any chance at all O.J. Howard could still be banging around in the middle of the draft, or is he just too strong of a tight end prospect to make it that far?
If you had asked me this maybe about a month or so ago, I would have said maybe. But the more I look at it and the more mock drafts I do and the more situations I try to come up with, the more I think he's going to go top 10. I feel like he's just too complete of a prospect. And it's rare to see that that highly touted of a tight end prospect. But I mean, Howard does pretty much everything you need. He'll block. He was underutilized at Alabama in the passing game, but obviously you saw in the national championship games and the Senior Bowls that has really soft hands. He's got speed. He's got size. He pretty much could be the ultimate kind of security blanket for any quarterback. I mean, in my most recent mock, I had him going to the Titans 5th overall. Even though they had Delaney Walker, they could use a 2 tight end set and help Mariota, develop a little more.
Nick, the wide receiver thing has been just daunting over 20 years. Ozzie has, by his own admission, struggled in finding the right wide receivers via the draft, whether we go back to Travis Taylor or whether we're talking about Brashad Perryman from 2 years ago. The notion that Mike Williams could be there at 16 or that they could go with Corey Davis. I've seen several mocks with him. And then there's the kid that runs at lightning's fast speed out of Washington as well that we've heard banging around as a first-round prospect, but he's a bit of a midget. Thoughts about the wide receiver thing at 16 for the Ravens?
I mean, if any of those guys are available at 16, I think they'd be a fine pick. I mean, I'm personally very high on Corey Davis. I think he, kind of like what I was saying with O.J. Howard before, I think Davis is a very well-rounded receiver prospect. He's tall. He can make contested catches. He's got good speed. He runs good routes. He's got solid hands. He could do, again, pretty much anything you need of him at the receiver aspect. So I have him a little bit higher on my board. I think I have him as my first receiver, and then Mike Williams, and then John Ross. But they're all pretty much in that clump together. I mean, if you're looking for a big, physical, kind of almost Mike Evans-y kind of receiver, then you might want to go with Mike Williams. He's the body, the physical kind of red zone presence. And then you mentioned John Ross with obviously his 424, I think it was, or 422 in the 40. You want someone to get downfield and get downfield quick. He can do that, but he's also, he'll use that speed on, to blow by defenders on crossing routes or to, you have a slant, kind of like what to go use a Giants-Ravens analysis, what Odell Beckham did to the Ravens in earlier this year. He took a slant 70 yards to the house for a touchdown. John Ross could kind of be that guy. You give him a short pass and then just let him turn the jets on and get downfield.
Well, I always think those guys are interesting, in a running back position or, in sort of multiple sets to get the ball to them behind the line of scrimmage and let them, beat some guys one-on-one. Part of that size for him as well. And, I think the size would say, how do you take that guy at 16? But time will tell. Nick Klopsis covers all things NFL draft for Newsday Sports. You can follow him out on Twitter as well at Nick Klopsis. I am looking at his mock draft right now at Newsday.com and Cam Robinson out of Alabama. So you do have the tackle position. Now, what is interesting to me are the quarterbacks in this draft because the Ravens clearly aren't in the market to take one, but it's going to affect them if 2 or 3 are gone by the time they get on the clock. I saw no enthusiasm during the season or even in the aftermath or during the Senior Bowl period or even at the Combine for any of these quarterbacks. I don't know that anyone universally likes any of these guys, maybe beyond Trubisky, and nobody really thinks him as a top 10 guy.
Right. I mean, Nestor, you pretty much hit it on the head. I mean, from this entire offseason, there hasn't really been a true consensus as to who the top guy is. I mean, some people have Trubisky as their top guy. Personally, I have Deshaun Watson as my top guy. I know some people have Deshaun Kaiser and then Patrick Mahomes, as their top guy. It really just depends. I've said this before. It's kind of like an ice cream kind of class. Like, you think about ice cream. Everybody likes ice cream. It's delicious. It's really good. It's just a matter of what flavor do you like. Do you like chocolate? Do you like vanilla? Do you like strawberry? Do you like mint? That's what this quarterback class is. Depending on what kind of traits you look for in a quarterback, that's the guy you would want. I mean, if you want someone who's, an accurate passer, maybe a little bit raw, but he can make most of the throws that you need and has some decent athleticism, Trubisky's the guy. If you're looking for someone who has proven himself on a big stage and can, has shown that they can get it done in crunch time, then you go with Watson. If you're looking for a big, mobile arm passer, you've got Kaiser. And then with Mahomes, he's kind of the gunslinger. He'll make a play out of nowhere, make it look, make a ridiculous play kind of look easy. So really, it depends on what kind of what flavor you like in your quarterback, to go back to that pun. But again, none of them, they all have their flaws. They all have their issues, and none of them really are the consensus guy. There isn't Andrew Luck in this class. There is no Jameis Winston or Marcus Mariota, who's really like the guy in this class.
Well, what's fascinating to me about the quarterback thing is that a third of the league needs a quarterback, and nobody's chomping at the bit for any of these cats. And as far as off-season movement, we heard about Garoppolo, we heard about McCarron. We believe that Romo was going to get a job somewhere. Lord knows there's been more written and talked about Colin Kaepernick than anyone, and yet these teams still don't have answers. Most of the teams that ended the year quarterbackless, even Mike Glennon, getting all the money in Chicago. If anybody thinks he's going to win 11 games in Chicago, they must be nuts, right?
That's what the whole puzzling thing about it. I mean, these teams, they're not. It looks like with those moves that they're kind of hedging on future classes, maybe in 2018, like a Sam Darnold or Josh Rosen. That's why Brian Hoyer can get a starting job in San Francisco, or like you said, like Mike Glennon can sign a 3-year deal to go in Chicago, or the Jets can bring in Josh McCown to either mentor Christian Hackenberg or Bryce Petty, or worst comes to worst, take the starting job. So if they all kind of went with the short-term stopgap options instead of to hedge their bets on any guys in this class, which is telling, and that kind of points to the whole thing about this class not being as strong as previous classes at the quarterback position.
Well, you're one of the guys that picked an offensive a player and a lineman to boot for the Ravens to try to run the ball and protect Joe Flacco. Not a sexy pick, at all, and it wasn't a sexy pick last year. Hell, it wasn't a sexy pick in '96 when I was up in New York seeing John Ogden get picked with the 4th pick in the draft. The wide receiver is the other position that we've talked so much about on offense, but I have believed that they need a pass rusher, and I believe that they need a corner. And from my understanding of this draft is it's deeper at those two positions, and maybe that's a place where they would go in the second or with the 2 third-round picks that they now have picked up by dealing Timmy Jernigan. I'm fascinated by the depth of those two positions, because for me with the Ravens, if they need to get something special out of this draft, it's got to be a rush edge, and it's got to be a corner. They have to come out of this draft with help at those two positions.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, you look at the current state of the Ravens edge rushers. I mean, Terrell Suggs, he's an age's wonder. I mean, he may go on to play until he's like 40 or 45.
God, I hope not. Don't say that.
But he's not getting any younger. I mean, they cut Elvis Dumervil. They have Matt Judon. I know they're high on him, but they still need some youth and some help alongside and behind them. So even in the first round, maybe a guy like Derek Barnett, or maybe a guy like a Hassan Reddick, or someone like Carl Lawson, Takaris McKinley. If they wanted to go in the first round, if they feel like you said, they're not going to be able to get a quality. This class is deep pass rushers, but maybe they feel the guys at the top are better head and shoulders than everyone else. Maybe they can go with one of those guys. But if they wanted to go to the second round, maybe they can get a guy like trying to think of a good example. Maybe like Ryan Anderson. Again, you mentioned Alabama before. He's an edge rushing linebacker guy. Maybe they go with a guy we're talking about in a cornerback help. Maybe they go with a guy like Cordrea Tankersley or Tre'Davious White. These classes both are, like you said, very, very deep at those positions. So they'll be able to get some quality players in the second and third round at not even just at pass rusher or at cornerback. There's a couple of positions that are really deep. Running back is very deep in this class. I know the Ravens don't necessarily need more running backs, but that's another position. Wide receiver is pretty deep as well. In terms of pass rushers and cornerback specifically, they could get a guy like I said, Cordrea Tankersley, or maybe a Chidobe Awuzie, the slot guy out of Colorado, or Fabian Moreau, the cornerback out of UCLA, or there's a ton of guys that will be available in those mid day 2 picks that they could potentially target if they wanted to go someone on offense.
That's why we watch the draft. He is Nick Klopsis. You can follow his journey out at Newsday.com. He is their draft guru. Also out at Nick Klopsis on Twitter. That's KLOPSIS. Nick, give me a couple of players that you love in the draft. And I've started with this with everybody and saying, don't say Myles Garrett, right? But it is fascinating that he is such a consensus top pick, along with Solomon Thomas, I think, at this point, who's becoming a consensus number 2 pick in this draft. And, I'm assuming those guys will hear plenty of them, over the next 5 to 8 to 10 years in this league. But there's some other players out there. You always fall in love with somebody. Who are your guys in this one, Nick?
I'll give you one guy on offense and one guy on defense. I mean, you took Myles Garrett. Obviously, that was the easy answer. But no. But in terms of some late, some end of the first round, beginning of the second round, that will be available on offense. I like Forrest Lamp, the offensive tackle / guard at Western Kentucky. He is basically, you look at Justin Pugh of the Giants, you look at Zach Martin of the Cowboys, Forrest Lamp fits that mold. College tackle, has too short of arms really to be a offensive tackle in the NFL level, but he's perfect inside to play guard. He's very athletic, he's strong, he's sound both in the run and pass games.
And I've seen him mocked into the first round a ton lately. And, part of that's being a small school guy at Western Kentucky, right?
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's he's kind of a late riser, quote unquote, because like you said, he came from a small school. Not many people watch Hilltoppers football on a regular basis, so they don't really know until they dive into the film and they say, hey, this kid, this offensive tackle, he's really, and I mean, he could potentially be I think he could play offensive tackle. It just might be a little bit more of a struggle. I think his better fit would be at guard inside, like the Giants did with Justin Pugh and what the Cowboys did with Zach Martin. He basically pretty much is like a 2017 version of them. So he's someone that I like kind of at the back end of the first round. I don't think he'll end up getting to the second round, but he might end up being there later in the first round. Excuse me. And then someone he's probably more of a second rounder, this guy, but I like him on defense. Budda Baker, this is the out of Washington. He's small. He's undersized. I think he's only like 5'9" and 5'9" and 195, which is small for a safety, but he doesn't play like that. It's like he's 6'3", 224. He flies around the field making hits. If you remember Bob Sanders with the Colts,
sure,
from a couple of years ago, he's basically a Bob Sanders clone. Just very aggressive, not afraid to make the big hit, even if it means that he's going to be on the shelf for a week or two because he might get injured. He might have a couple of injuries at the NFL level just from that hard hitting kind of, I don't want to say reckless, but that kind of aggressive style, which is really fun to watch. But you have to be careful with the injury on that aspect. But when he's healthy, he's just a treat to watch.
I love his name. I think I like Tease Tabor more, but I mean, there's some great names year after year. I mean, I thought we had a Ha-Ha in the draft. I thought we'd never top that name. But I mean, we have an Adderee, we have a Taco. I mean, hell, it's like it's like a lunch buffet. What we got going on here with these names.
My favorite name in all this draft, you won't hear him until day 3. He's kind of like a sixth round guy, Air Force guy, safety. His name is Weston Steelhammer. If that's not a powerful NFL name, I don't know what is.
I want him running special teams for me right now, just to say I have him
exactly.
on my team. Nick, always great to visit with you, man. Sports web editor and NFL draft guy out at Newsday Sports up in New York, where they do a great job at Newsday.com as well. You can follow him, Nick Klopsis, Klopsis. There's a wonderful picture of you and the Heisman. And, hey, we got to update that. You got to get that photoshopped into Draft 17 up there, okay? That's my little digital tip for you this week, bud. That's it, man. Nick, great having you on, buddy. All right, we'll talk to you again after the draft for sure. Nick Klopsis up at Newsday giving us some NFL draft insights. We'll be doing that all month. I'm going to be going around talking to people about possibilities for the Ravens. 'Tis the season, and, of course, Cap's headed off to Toronto next week. I will be in Toronto broadcasting most of next week, and I'm looking forward to that. I might even steal a little Red Sox-Blue Jays game at Skydome before it's all over with as well. Get my passport stamped at the Peace Bridge. We'll see how that goes, if they let me back in or not. Time will tell. The Buy a Toyota Audio Vault will be there for you 24 hours a day from anywhere in the world on your mobile device. Just download the TuneIn Radio app. You can listen to what we do on this side of the border, that side of the border, even on the Eastern Shore. They let us come in over there. The morning newspaper delivers to your email inbox free of charge each and every morning at 7 a.m. That's brought to you by Planet Fitness and PlanetFitness.com, where it's still $10 a month to get in the best shape of your life. Last but never least, if we have breaking news, and for those of you, there are about 10,000 of you now on the WNST tech service. When you get that, you know it's legit, and we'll be sending plenty of those out. Draft weekend, and between now and then, the Orioles will be running 10-day disabled lists up and down and back and forth, and the Wizards in the playoffs as well. We got a busy, busy time of the year, but I love talking some draft, love talking some baseball on a day-by-day basis, and I'm wearing out the batteries on my remote control right now. We have our WNST trip to London on sale right now. We got $100 off for anybody that's been on a WNST road trip. All you have to do is email me, nasty@WNST.net. We'll make sure you get to take advantage of that. Waiting on Green Bay, waiting on Oakland, waiting on Minnesota and Nashville and the NFL schedule, which we expect to come out next week. So we'll have even more information there. If you're interested in any of our trips, just toss me an email. I am a very available individual. I'm on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Snapchat, Instagram, streaming live on our Facebook as well as our YouTube WNSTV channel. We are WNST.net, AM 1570 and WNST Towson, Baltimore, and we never stop talking Baltimore sports.